What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of exciting news to go over here this week, but before I get into the news this week, I first want to announce that I will be doing my usual weekly live stream here on 9 p.m. at Eastern time here on Sunday night, like I usually do. The Sunday night live stream seemed to work out a little bit better for everyone, so we're going to keep doing those. So hang out if you can. We're just going to be talking cars, answering your questions, and just having a good time. So yeah, I look forward to hopefully seeing those of you who can make it there on Sunday night. But getting into the news here this week, I'm going to do it a little differently. Usually, towards the end of the weekly update is when I cover the vehicles that are going away. But the real headline thing this week is just how fast the sub $20,000 new car market is shrinking here. And so I want to cover the stuff that's going away first here this week. So first, if automotive news is to be believed here, the number of new cars on sale that are going to be offered under $20,000 is going to go from 3 cars to 1 here in just the next year or two. So at the end of last week, they reported that an unnamed source told them that the Mitsubishi Mirage will leave the U.S. market before the end of 2025, which gives us a little bit of time, and that it won't get a successor here in the States. And officially, Mitsubishi spokesperson claims it's a vehicle that we still see as having a role in our portfolio at this time, and that it fulfills the role of an entry-level vehicle. But it's the same price as a Nissan Versa, while meanwhile the Versa is more powerful, more roomy, has nicer stuff, is safer, is newer, just has a lot of stuff going for it, and it's the same price. So I can see why Mitsubishi Mirage sales, especially in the past couple of years, Mirage has really dropped off quickly with its sales, and it's just... it's basically like an 80s Econobox that's been updated over the past, 30, 40 years or whatever. But it's, essentially still it's offering that same formula of something with like 75 or 80 horsepower, gets really good fuel economy, but it's a tiny little, packaged beer can of a car, that's just like, hasn't stayed up to date quite as well as some of the other competitors. And so, yeah, I don't think it's going to really be missed. But, it was one of the cheapest cars available in America. And for a brief period, I think it was the cheapest. But that is now reserved for the Versa still. So anyway, no one's going to really miss the Mirage, I think, but that's the first one that's going down. Now, hot on the heels of that report comes another report from Automotive News here claiming that the other sub $20,000 casualty, not the Versa, thankfully, that's going to be coming sooner here, is the Kia Rio. The Hyundai Accent got killed off last year, and the Kia Rio, which is its platform sibling there, is also going to get the axe here. So supposedly it's only going to be built for the next few months for this one, and then it's not going to get a 2024 model year, so it is going to be done after 2024 begins here. So now this is just a report, again, nothing official. And the official word from Kia right now is that they have no official announcement, and added that the Rio and Rio 5-door remain strong entry points to the Kia brand. And interestingly, Rio sales have actually remained pretty steady. They haven't dropped off like the Mirage, really. So there's some argument to be made that maybe they still could have a place in that market if they were choosing to compete there, but it sounds like they won't, according to this report. Again, could be wrong. We'll see. And we already saw, I covered a few weeks ago, the new Kia K3, which will be replacing the Rio in other markets in the world. But it sounds like that's probably not going to be the case here in the States. There's been supposedly a vehicle spy that'll be called the K4, supposedly, that will be the new Forte and will most likely end up being the entry-level model for Kia. And so, we'll just have to see, how that all plays out. Some people are saying the K3 could come here. We'll just have to see. I think it could make sense, again, because sales were decent for, stuff like this. But, and I think there's a need still. But that's really the sad thing about all these vehicles going away. Yes, inflation plays a factor, and so, 30 is the new 20 in a lot of ways. But it's also just kind of unfortunate that, you have a shrinking segment of really, truly super affordable vehicles out there, and it's a shame. So, as it is now, if these reports are to be believed and, are actually going to happen, which I think seems likely, then we're going to be left with the Nissan Versa currently as the only vehicle sold under $20,000. Supposedly with average transaction prices, Versas are still transacting above 20, just barely, but Nissan offers it under 20. They can still get one with a manual transmission for the base model for about $17,000 exactly. So well under 20 actually. With a manual, still has a touchscreen, still has automatic emergency braking and all these things still, which is kind of impressive. And I spent a week with a Versa a few years back, and it's actually a really nice little car. I actually enjoyed my time in it. It's not a penalty box. It's not a miserable experience. It was actually kind of a fun little thing to run around in. And I think it's great. And so I think this is kind of only the strongest will survive thing, and the Versa is the strongest of the three, and it seems like that will be the one that survives here, hopefully for a good while longer. And by the way, if you want the Versa with an automatic, it'll still be under $19,000, so you don't have to pay that much more for the auto. But anyway, I'd just rather have the Versa if you are shopping in that segment anyway, and thankfully the Versa is sticking around, for the foreseeable future. But moving on here, for some polar opposite news here, shifting gears big time, I wanted to cover the last couple of late Pebble Beach debuts that came out towards the end of last week and last weekend there that I thought were important to cover. So first off, Lamborghini revealed the Lanzador concept, which is it previews a limited run model, but this is a concept version of that limited run model that will eventually evolve into a mainline model by 2028. So think Cyan now to the Ruelto. So something like that is what we're looking at here. This is like the Cyan of this vehicle. And so anyway, as you can see, it's a lifted two-door four-seater that Lamborghini calls an Ultra GT, and the interior is a little concept-y still, but you can see that the driver and the passenger are going to be getting their own screens there, and the rest is pretty minimalistic but very cool looking. And Lamborghini didn't detail much else, so we don't have any powertrain details really, aside from them saying it's going to be dual motors and over 1,300 horsepower. And it'll also get torque vectoring, rear wheel steering, and adjustable air suspension, all kind of givens in this segment anyway. And there's no battery or range info given, so we have no clue what they're planning on doing for the battery here yet. But a very cool look, I think, and we'll see how that develops. But the other notable debut that I wanted to cover here from Pebble Beach was the next generation 2024 Mercedes-AMG GT. And oh boy, this is an interesting one. It's going to be really hard not to roast this car, because it just seems like they made so many bad choices with this. Just again, being armchair quarterback over here. But anyway, so let's get into it here. The styling is very evolutionary. The biggest changes, though, are that it's now a four-seater and that it switches from rear-wheel drive to all-wheel drive only. And those two changes are the main reason why it has the biggest change that it has here, which is the weight has changed dramatically. So Road and Track looked into it here and found that the curb weight for this new GT is 4,343 pounds, which is 783 pounds heavier than the old one, and also makes it about 900 pounds heavier than even an all-wheel drive Porsche 911 Carrera 4. And they wonder why people are buying 911s instead of AMG GTs. It's like, you already lost the battle here. Who's going to go for a vehicle that's that much heavier than a 911? That's one of the things that makes the 911 so great, is the fact that it's lightweight, relatively speaking, in modern times here. And even like the Nissan GTR, maybe this is dating myself a little bit, but some of you might remember when the GTR came out and everyone's like, oh, it's so heavy. How can it even be a performance vehicle? It's so big and bloated and heavy and blah, blah, blah. Everyone's complaining. Here we are now, about 15 years later, and the GTR even comes in about 400 pounds lighter than this. So, the previous heavyweight of the bunch is now turning out to be, pretty slim in comparison. But anyway, it appears part of the problem is also the fact this is essentially like a hardtop SL if we really oversimplify it, but that's kind of what it comes down to here. It shares a lot, platform, powertrains, a lot of the mechanicals and all that. So it's going to be offered in a GT55 coupe that does 469 horsepower and a GT63 coupe that does 577 horsepower. They both run the 4-liter twin-turbo V8, so that's at least a win. You get the twin-turbo V8 still, and it doesn't have hybridization, miraculously. You would think while they're piling on the weight, they might as well toss a bunch of batteries and electric motors in there too, but they have relented, at least for now, and they're not putting that in here at least. So the slower one here does a 3.8 seconds 0 to 60, with the faster one doing a 3.1 seconds 0 to 60. Now, compared with the last generation, this one is more powerful, but it does lose some of the things that also made the last generation really unique and made it a true sports car in a lot of ways. So it no longer has dry sump lubrication, which means the engine now has to sit up higher. So you're going to have a worse center of gravity, higher center of gravity. You also no longer have a rear transaxle gearbox, meaning weight distribution is likely, gotten worse as well there. So, those two things are just really big bummers. I mean, it was like a front mid-engine car with the original AMG GT. I'm not sure if they're calling it front mid-engine here still for this one or not, if it's just regular front engine now, but that was a huge deal. And I mean, I drove the AMG GT. It was fantastic to drive. It was a really fun vehicle. I mean, I had my, I prefer other stuff, but I still think it was a really solid vehicle. And anyway, Moving on here, the transmission is still the Mercedes 9-speed multi-clutch, but it ditches its torque converter for a wet start-off clutch, which Mercedes claims is going to give it better response and reduced weight. But why bother with reducing the weight when it's already so much heavier, and the fact that this is clearly going for a softer AMG GT now with the extra seats and the extra weight and the all-wheel drive. This is not the hardcore sports car anymore, so like why have this? Getting rid of the torque converter is going to make it much rougher in traffic. I mean, I'm sure they'll try and smooth it over as much as they can, but you know, just dual clutches in traffic still usually can't match a torque converter for smoothness. And what are people buying this new AMG GT going to do? Cruise around in traffic and drive slowly and not use it like a sports car because it's less of a sports car than the last generation. So you know, they went softer with everything else and like, oh, well, let's go hardcore with the transmission so that everyone can have herky-jerky, you know, response in traffic. It's like, why would you do that? But anyway, that's what they decided to do. And anyway, moving on here, they also decided to make it a little bit interesting in other ways. So handling-wise, it has a hydraulic anti-roll system, which I guess is an attempt to combat the extra weight, but also adds more weight as well, being a hydraulic system. You also have torque vectoring with rear-wheel steering, extra complexity, but you know that'll certainly help. And rear-wheel steering is great, so that's nice. But they also went to the trouble of putting in forged aluminum suspension components, also trying to reduce weight. So I guess they're trying to stop the bleeding a little bit here. I guess it doesn't matter pricing-wise. So if they want to put pricey, you know, aluminum suspension components in it, then you know, go for it. But I just think the transmission is definitely a bad choice here. I don't know. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. But anyway, moving on here, it also adds active aero, which is also adding on extra weight, but also is going to help with the performance, you know, trying to improve it in some ways. So there's active louvers that guide air under the car, and also a rear spoiler that adjusts for better stability and downforce. But they do get 6-piston calipers up front on 15.4-inch composite rotors, and the tires are 295s in the front and 305s in the rear, so we still have lots of grip at least. Now, inside it gets the usual Mercedes interior stuff that we've seen, you know, in many other vehicles here so far, but it continues to look, you know, really plush and expensive, much like you'd expect from a vehicle that is almost certainly going to cost well over $100,000. And while it does have a back seat, even Mercedes says it's only suitable for people under 5 feet tall. So basically, you know, children for the most part. And yeah, the only other thing I will say is that at least they made the hatchback nice and big here. So it does have a huge trunk, it looks like, which is, you know, great and gives you a little bit of extra practicality there in addition to the back seats, which are nice. I mean, like, you know, I have a daughter and I'd be great. You know, 2+2s are awesome because it means I can take her with me and not have to put her in the front. So, I mean, I appreciate the changes they made to this. It's just, I don't know why they needed all-wheel drive in a vehicle that is almost certainly never going to see bad weather, and you know, doesn't need the all-wheel drive for performance either, because the last generation again was great and a fantastic performer. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox here, I guess. So I'm happy it continues with the V8 and doesn't have any kind of hybrid stuff. You know, even though I wouldn't mind hybrid stuff at this point since it's so heavy, but you know, they at least kept it pure in that regard. And they'll begin arriving at dealers in early 2024, and there's no pricing for these yet, but I would say bank on it being SL pricing, maybe a little bit more, but you know, I think that's a safe bet. And anyway, though, speaking of V8 powered Mercedes, there's more bad news here this week. So 2 weeks ago, I talked about, we've been having this continuing saga. We talked first off about the rumors that came out that there was going to be the V8 coming back into the C63 because no one wants the current C63 with the 4-cylinder and the electrified hybrid thing. And it was all very exciting. Everyone was like, yay, we're going to have the V8 back. And then last week, some of the German publications spoke with their connected sources inside, and those sources essentially said this report is nonsense. And so this week, thankfully, the Drive got to the bottom of it here, and the Drive interviewed Mercedes-AMG's own CEO at Monterey last week, and we now have an official answer from them thanks to the Drive. So their CEO said he can definitively deny that a V8 is coming back to the C and E class, and defended the decision, saying, I don't like to talk about other manufacturers, but it seems like there are many more performance hybrids coming to the market now, or at least they've been announced. So I think we were right when we said, let's go in that direction. The key distinction he's missing here, though, is that, yes, the new M5 is going to have a hybrid setup, but it's also going to have a V8 hybrid setup. That's the key. He's being very selective with his comparisons here. I'm sure maybe there's some other stuff coming from other companies that might be electrified in other ways and maybe won't have V8s, but if their primary competitor is going to be, the BMW and potentially the Audi, which, I mean, they might be downsizing as well to a 6-cylinder in the future, but at least BMW, primary competitor, is doing a V8 hybrid if all the rumors and speculation and leaks are to be, believed. So, unless he knows something we don't, and the M5 is going to end up having a 4-cylinder, I don't think he's some visionary here. I think that they went a little further than everybody else. Now they're getting the backlash as a result of that. Maybe in time, they will come out ahead. I don't know. They have very smart people running the company, but it seems like they don't have flexibility. And so from what the rumors have suggested, it seems like there's very little demand for the new C63. It sounds like they're fine with that car just rotting on lots if no one wants them, and sticking to their guns and saying, we're going to do a 4-cylinder C63, and if no one buys it, we don't care. It's essentially, I think, the consensus here. Again, maybe we'll be proven wrong and there'll be huge hits and everyone will love it. We'll see. I'll wait and reserve my judgment of the car until I can actually drive it myself. But it seems like the reviews so far have been mixed on it. So we will see. But anyway, now there's no V8 coming back to the C63 and the E63. So if you want a V8 powered Mercedes sedan, you have to go up to the S63 or the AMG GT 4-door. Those are the only ones that are going to be offering that. So at least they're still there in those, but it is officially dead in the C-Class and the E-Class, unfortunately. The last little bit of Mercedes news here is they gave the EQB a light refresh here just 2 years in, which is a pretty quick turnaround for a refresh, so that's impressive. But, it's just the usual kind of minor refresh stuff. So the grille and bumper is slightly different. The taillights get new elements inside of them. Inside, it finally gets a 10.25-inch screen as standard. Sorry to be pessimistic, but I complained about this in my EQB review as well when I reviewed one earlier this year. It's insane that Mercedes still nickel and dimes people for this stuff whenever you get like a 10-inch screen as standard and like a Hyundai and a low Hyundai at that, so it's just like hilarious. But anyway, now you get the 10-inch screen as standard. It also does now wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. It also adds 2 new sound experiences, but Mercedes is also going to start rolling out their in-screen purchases with 2 other sounds only being available if you pay extra for them. Which, are people really going to pay for that? Probably not. And I think this also is going to leave another bad taste in Mercedes fans' mouths, that it's like, the EQB, which is already overpriced as it is, at least with the current one, and then you're going to try and charge people extra for more sounds. Good luck with that. But anyway, that's what they're doing. Sorry, I'm on a roll today. Other improvements here are it gets Dolby Atmos integration in the Burmester stereo, better cameras for the safety systems. There's also a new range monitor that allows you to identify what might be hurting your range, so you can minimize or turn those things off, which is kind of a cool idea and a nice thing they're offering there. Then there's also plug and charge capability now on compatible chargers, which is great. That means as long as you got a card, synced up to the car, you can just plug in those compatible chargers and it immediately starts charging without having to do any kind of weird app stuff or anything. And that's great. I use plug and charge in the Mach-E all the time. It's really nice to use. So unfortunately, the things that actually needed improving on the EQB have not been touched. So there's the same slow 100 kilowatt DC fast charging and the same maximum range of just 250 miles. And even that is only available if you go for the base front-wheel drive one. You're willing to settle for that. The all-wheel drive ones still have like barely over 200 miles of range. So it's still hard to see how this is competitive here. There's no updated pricing yet. I really hope they actually drop the price a good bit compared to the current pricing for the EQB, because that was my biggest thing. If you watch my EQB review, it's like 15 grand more expensive than a comparable GLB, and you're really gonna have to love EVs to pay an extra 15 grand for what is essentially an electric GLB. It's just a tough sell. We'll see if this helps, but I'm inclined to think that it won't help much. But anyway, there it is, and interesting to see that. And the last little bit of news here is that this week, Honda and Acura are the companies that are announcing they're switching over to the NACS charging port here in 2025. It's been a few weeks where we haven't had a new announcement, but it seemed like every single week for a few months there, it was like someone else is like, hey, we're also going to adopt the Tesla charging network and the NACS port. And so now Honda and Acura came out and said they're announcing it. Now, with Honda and Acura, it was kind of a given already because their first EVs that are coming before 2025 or 2026 here are going to be the GM Ultium ones. GM was the first to announce this switch, or I think Ford was, and GM was, right after them. So, since these are on GM platforms, it was going to use the GM stuff most likely. So this, made sense. That was always going to be the case. But now we have confirmation that is in fact what's happening. They did say that, the ZDX is a 2024 model year, so that will start with the CCS port and then switch over to the NACS port whenever GM decides to do that, which, again, they're saying 2025 most likely. I think Acura is suggesting maybe 2026 even potentially, but could be like the 2026 model year. By the time they actually get that switch done, we will see how that all plays out with that, switch over and all that. But so anyway, and they didn't mention the Prologue, but I'm assuming the Prologue will also, follow the same path since they're, pretty much the same car and all that. So, interesting to hear that, and great news again for those people that are getting those ZDXs and the Prologues. Another really great thing, you're going to have access to the Tesla charging network and have the new port there if you go for one of those later model years. So anyway, interesting to see that. And lastly, I want to thank all of you that are members of the Matt Moran Motoring Club. So we did have a bunch of new members join this week, all thanks to the generosity here of the members who gifted memberships here during the last live stream. So I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to Carlos Roja and Kyle for gifting those memberships. I really appreciate both of you, all your support. It really means a lot, and I'm sure the new members also are very appreciative. So I want to give a big welcome to those new members here. So welcome to Enforcer Zero, Kevin Harris, Jalen Ward, and Hunter Donnelly. I hope you're all enjoying the perks here so far, and be sure to join in the live stream here on Sunday night if you can, where those members do get that priority answering. It'd be great to chat with all of you more there. But if you want to join, also get that priority answering, you can always join with join buttons here on the video page, on the channel page, and a link in the description, along with all the other perks you get there as a member. But anyway, that's it as far as all the news this week, guys. Let me know your thoughts and all this stuff in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. Please also leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.